Welcome to Dungeon Brew. Today, Josh and I are going to be continuing our series on narrative design. Today, we're going to be discussing how to engage your players in TTRPGs. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
All right, welcome back. Today, we're talking about how to keep your players engaged in TTRPGs. You've got your storyline, you've got your players, you've got your quests, some side quests, maybe even some baby mama drama. But how do you actually keep your players interested and excited throughout the process as you go? Josh, you and John are both really good at this. So, where do you even begin? How do you set yourself up for this?
Fear is a great tactic. If religion has taught us anything, you just need to promise them eternal salvation or eternal damnation at the expense of them for whatever choices they make. Now, really,
That'll do it.
it requires a ball and a chain and a chair. No, really, where I like to start off with is probably where we kind of started off in talking about narrative design in full, which I probably should give a caveat. This is our last video in this series, so it has been wonderful doing this. If you guys want us to make another one on this, let us know what you want us to talk about down in the comments below. But where we kind of started at was talking about knowing the world that you are creating. You have to know what makes your world interesting, what makes it unique, and what story you're telling, what the plot is within that world that really makes it engaging, that has characters want to be involved in that. And knowing that like the back of your hand, I think, is paramount. Knowing who your NPCs are, knowing what the conflicts are, knowing what the enemy is and what the danger is, and just really building it up to kind of get your emotions rattled and ready to just roll out at the beginning of the game. So knowing your world inside and out as best as you can, knowing what the plot is inside and out as best as you can to tell a dynamic story. I think that that's the first thing you have to do. Know what it is that you're talking about before you sit down to do game one. And I'll be honest, I struggle in this sometimes. Sometimes I get really excited about an idea. Like, all right, guys, we're playing D&D. Let's get together. And we all come together and we get like into like session 3. And then my players start asking me questions. I'm like, oh, I didn't really flesh it out that well. Like, I actually don't know the answer to those questions. So knowing it well will keep them engaged within the game.
Yeah, and I think knowing it well can actually help you in situations where you kind of start, not really having ideas with where to go based on something a character's done, because the world itself can tell a story based on where you're at. Knowing the history of the town that you're in or what kind of people are going to be in the town, you can kind of start grasping at the little details and create something kind of at the drop of a hat so that will still make sense and keep the story going within that world and your storyline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is something you're going to be able to talk well on or speak well to, but also using visual and audio aids as much as possible. And I recognize, like, when you think of TTRPGs, most of us have an image of like we're all coming together in our mom's basement and we're using our imaginations to just really enjoy like this fantastical story that we're all imagining and telling together. But we now live in a world of amazing technology where I can pull up images at the click of a button. There's tools out there to listen to music and have it just really stir the emotions. And these can be very impactful to immerse your players into the game.
Yes, that my big time favorite thing is tabletop audio. I go around spewing this website to everybody, to writers, to gamers. It's a site that has free sound bites that you can play for background. So if your characters are walking in the snow or in a wagon in the snow, there's a background sound for that. If you're sitting, by a river of blood, there's a background for that where it sounds a little extra goopy. Like it's really detailed stuff specific to the scenes and being able to actually use audio. I mean, it's science that music and sound really, it affects your brain, it affects your moods, and really pulls you into whatever it is that you have going. This is why you have study music, why you have sleeping music, and it's going to be just as magical if you're using it for your gameplay. I freaking love it. That's, I think, one of the best things playing with you and John is having that background music, because you guys just kind of seem to know how to use the right music to invoke the right emotions. And that music is going to do that. It's going to invoke the emotions. It's going to set the mood, but it can, I feel like I don't want this to sound like in a, I mean, obviously not in a bad way. It can manipulate the emotions of the
Mm-hmm.
players and kind of, direct them in the mood or the style of what it is you're trying to create in the game.
By sitting down and gaming in a TTT, all the T's, RPGs, then you are inviting yourself to be manipulated to some extent.
Yes. Yes.
But it is wonderful to have things like that. Like I know in our Hawkhurst campaign that I ran, there are soundboards that can be utilized where I could click every
Mhm.
time a door was opening. I could have the sound of people in the kitchen or in a tavern. I had bards that were singing songs in the back while you're there, drinks being poured, and the sounds of combat. I can have the combat sounds occurring in the background as you guys are actually fighting. Like all of those types of things really bring you into the mold of the game, and it's not just
Mhm.
those audio pieces. Also, like we said, the visual. We have now AI generated visuals that can be created at the GM's whim. You can use things like Midjourney
Mhm.
and just be like, hey, I need to have myself an old military man with a scar on his cheek, missing two fingers on his right hand, and it will generate me that image that I can then pull up in
Mhm.
the game and say, hey, here's Sir Braveheart that is now going to be accompanying with you. This is the trauma that he has suffered, and this is his personality. And I have that visual to pull out of your imagination, out of my description, and put right there on the screen in front of you.
Yeah, you make it a little more real with it, and I mean it touches. I mean, vision, seeing things visually is also going to
Mm-hmm.
affect and draw in the interest and the emotion of the players.
So the third thing we want to talk about is probably the most important and why we've spent so much
Mhm.
time on this narrative design series, and that's having the players be part of the storytelling process. That is
Oh
what
yeah.
makes TTRPG so much fun, is that it's not just the GM story, it's everyone's story. So you want to start this off? How do we get them involved in that
The best
process?
way I think to start is to allow them to be part of the decision making, which I mean you have to do with TTRPGs. They have to be the ones making their decisions. And it's especially fun when you can make them questionable decisions. I absolutely like we talk about this a lot, outside of screen stuff, but moral dilemmas. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely hate them. I do not like putting myself in that position, but they will do amazing things to keep a story engaging, to keep your player immersed in what's going on, to really make them really delve into their character. Because not only are they questioning their own mentality of, wait a second, what would I do? They have to put themselves in the shoe of the player,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever kind of player they're playing, and make sure that it makes sense to that as well. But it kind of forces them into the storytelling aspect of it themselves.
And you need to have real consequences that occur from those
Mhm.
decisions. Now, this, of course, happens with moral dilemmas, but any decision that's being made should not just be a clear cut, black and white, oh, you made the right option versus the wrong option in the course of storytelling. Every decision being made has some consequence, it has some sort of event that unfolds based on what it is that you chose to do. You sided with the king, and as a result, you've upset the rebels that are rebelling against the king. You sided with
Mhm.
the rebels, and as a result, the king is now pulling in armies from an adjacent nation that he's allied with to help overthrow those rebels because you wouldn't work with him. Having some sort of result or consequence for every decision really keeps the story going, and it makes the players' decisions matter. It always invokes a
Yeah.
different type of response from the GM. Along with that, which is probably my personal favorite, is making sure that the characters' story arcs are embedded within the course of gameplay, within the overall plot arc.
Mhm.
All of my characters write a backstory to who they are, who their family is, who their connections are, what it is that they want to achieve, what their motivations are. And I bring those characters and their backstories to life. I have them exist within the world. They come in, they leave, they impact the course of gameplay. They come back and cause moral dilemmas for my characters who have, were hoping that they would never see this mentor again or never have to engage their sister again about that terrible thing that happened in the Shadowlands. Whatever it is, I bring that back for them so that their plot arcs are always a part, or their story arcs, their character arcs are always a part of the overall plot as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Anything that's going to make them feel like the story is theirs. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just belonging to everybody else, or they're not just, a house plant that you're carrying around on an adventure, to make them feel like they are part of the story. But I think I wanted to touch on really quick the whole part about making sure that the consequences aren't just affecting the character themselves and their own personal story. Make sure that it's affecting everybody around them as well. And maybe even the world, like you said, if you're siding with, the wrong king or something, then, a whole war erupts because of something, that happens in that whole process. I mean, it's something that forces everybody into sort of a mental
Mm-hmm.
shift. They're not just going according to, well, I already have this pre-planned. Somebody else does something. Wait, now I have to change this. Now I have to really be realistic and make sense. What would make sense for my character to do next?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other piece of really immersing characters is making sure they can show off.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Making sure that they can actually use the abilities that they're gaining, use the items that they're finding, and be able to do things that are kind of bend the limits of what reality are. Because that is
Mm-hmm.
what TTRPGs are about. I can wield magic, I can leap off tall buildings, I can hero dive on top of the enemy and, teacup him to the teacup, tea bag, doing something with tea, and you can essentially do all sorts of amazing things. But knowing that the characters have a progression that they're going through, they are leveling up, they're obtaining new abilities, new magic, new skill sets, new maneuvers, and making sure that they have an opportunity to exercise those and practice those during the course of gameplay. There's nothing more frustrating than being like, I've had this spell since level 3 and I've never had a chance to cast it because I've never seen undead. Or I've never seen whatever it is. And so I'm just walking around with all this knowledge and this power, and you keep throwing me against, green slimes that this does nothing against.
Yeah. And I think it's good to give your players that chance to kind of discuss these things amongst themselves as well, not just with the GM, which
Mm-hmm.
kind of takes us into the next point, balancing conversation with battle and adventure, making sure that you're taking that time that for the characters to be able to get to
Mm-hmm.
know each other. I can't, even think how many times a character that I have played, like I didn't know what to do, but then knowing one of, my
Mm-hmm.
party members, abilities, talking with them or, shouting something across the volcano or something. Let's do this. Let's try this move, or
Yeah.
knowing, somebody's character, what they're most likely to do based on their personality to go take an action that is risky, but thinking, well, this player, that's what they're like. They're probably going to come in and help me out if I get, caught up in something too much. But taking that time to actually sit and have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation, around a campfire or, going and getting smashed in a tavern or something. You got to do something where they're going to have that time to get to know each other throughout the process, alongside the battles and the adventure.
Yeah, some people have played video games that are very just quest driven, and you run from point A to point B and you complete the objective and then you move on to the next one. And that's not really the full measure of what a TTRPG can be. And John and I have made videos on this before talking about the different pillars of gameplay. You have social encounters, exploration encounters, combat encounters, and all of these are kind of weighed differently based on the campaign that you create. And again, you can go watch these videos that we've made here on Dungeon Brew that talk about that specifically. But some of them may be heavy combat, some of them may be heavy exploration, some may be heavy social, depending on the type of game that you're running. But every game should include all of them to some degree. That percentage change may be there where it's 30% social, 50 combat, whatever I've left, 20% exploration. But whatever it is, all of them should exist to some degree, and you want to make sure that it is available to the characters so that it balances
Mm-hmm.
out. I know for myself, I am not a hack and slash dungeon delver gamer. Like, I do not want to spend a 4-hour gaming session running through a dungeon just
Mm-hmm.
slaughtering down troglodytes that are running through a door for 4 hours. That is miserable to me. I need to have the social interaction. I need to have the exploration. I need to have that drunken brawl at the tavern. Not brawl, that drunken activity that you mentioned. You said it so well
Mm-hmm.
earlier. I just want to
Getting
go get drunk,
smashed.
smash. I just want to get drunk at a tavern with my friends. I don't need to be killing troglodytes all the time.
Yeah, well, maybe troglodytes start coming in while you're drunk. That'll be fun too.
Yeah, there you
Having to
go.
suddenly turn around with your tankard and be like, "Whoa, hold up, what's going on?"
Yep, rolling con saves to see whether or not you can keep your balance or dex saves. So I think that's an important piece too. Make sure that you're mixing up the gameplay, that you're offering. Every gaming session should have something, not everyone, but they should have some new and innovative ways of presenting these types of pillars, so it's not always the same thing at every session.
Exactly. You got it. And I mean it's gonna give you more depth, but it also gives you more opportunities for different kinds
Mhm.
of fun, which is going to, in the end, let's go full circle here, engage your player.
All right, so we hope that this has been helpful for you. Let us know what we didn't include in this video that should be included for engaging your characters, special tips and tricks that you utilize to keep your players immersed with in-game play. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell. What else, Diana?
I don't know. I think that's it.
All right, go watch some more Dungeon Brew videos. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Dungeon Brew.